Yo, what's up? It's Violet. In this video I want to cover the 3 separate casters and my impressions as to what it's like to play each of them. Now I say 3 because I'm not going to be covering Blue Mage in this video. I think that they're part of their own content and need to be talked about individually. Since you won't be taking Blue Mage into any content over level 60, they're kind of irrelevant to this video, which we'll be talking about Black Mage, Red Mage, and Summoner, mostly at level 80 and endgame content, but the leveling experience could apply too. Now, I want to focus more on how it feels to play the jobs and their pacing rather than the in-depth like skills, rotations of the jobs, because there's lots of information on that. So I just want to give my personal take on how it felt to me to play every one of these jobs, not only in 80 dungeons, but also in Savage content, this current Savage tier, which is Eden's Verse. So to start with, I think a good way to look at the 3 casters is to actually separate them into 3 different categories of pacing, which is slow, medium, and fast. Black Mage fits into the slow category, Summoner is the faster job, and Red Mage is the in-between the two of them. And I think just having these 3 adjectives can help people already identify which job they might enjoy playing more. But of course, we're going to go into more detail now, starting with Black Mage. So what does it mean when I say that a job is slow? What do I mean when I say that Black Mage is slow? Well, what I'm trying to get at is that the pacing of the job is slow because everything feels simple, which isn't a necessarily bad thing. What I mean by simple is that there's not a lot going on in the rotation. There's not a lot of buttons to push. It's all relatively basic. But the reason for this is because the complexity from Black Mage really comes from your planning and how far you can think ahead, how well you can prepare yourself for what's coming, because movement is the biggest wrench that gets thrown in Black Mage's kit, because their kit does not play well with movement aside from triple and swift cast, so you have to be planning around that, and that's really kind of the whole job identity. And that's why I want to say that Black Mage feels slower to play, because unlike the other 2 jobs, you're not pushing tons of buttons, you're not doing, crazy melee combos or summoning things, you're just casting as many Fire 4s as you can in a given amount of time, and that's your main focus. I think that Black Mage is a good job to pick up if you're really into that glass cannon kind of archetype where you really like doing, really big DPS with just a few button pushes. If you're the kind of person that really likes planning and a slower paced kind of job, then I definitely try picking up Black Mage and see how it goes. However, do be warned that the leveling process is absolute hell. We'll go ahead and move on to the pretty much opposite job to Black Mage, which is Summoner, which in my opinion is the most technically demanding job of all 3 of them. They have the most things to micromanage between their dot and all their stuff coming off cooldown. Along with that, they have tons of buttons to be pushing. They have to be weaving constantly. They have to be keeping in mind what instants they have so that they can use those to weave. You gotta make sure you have 4 rune stacks to go into Bahamut. You gotta have Dreadworm stance in the Bahamut and the Firebirds. There's so much going on. And it's a very fast-paced job. Even though typical builds have their spell speed really low and their GCD timer is pretty slow, there's just so many buttons to be pushing and so many things to be considering at all times that it makes it feel very technically demanding. I think the way that I look at it is that in a fighting game, Black Mage would be the grappler character that does a ton of damage, while Summoner is the character that has a katana. And if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. If you like pushing a lot of buttons, if you like having a lot to do, if you liked playing Ninja, Gunbreaker, or Astrologian, I think Summoner is probably a good bet to start with. It can be hard to learn at first, especially if you jump in right at 80 because you got there free because you leveled up Scholar and you didn't play Summoner at all during leveling like me because DPS suck. Then it can be very confusing. It can give you a headache at first, but it's still a really rewarding job with a nice degree of movement. You don't have to worry about it like Black Mage. And along with that, you also bring raid utility with the race, so that's also really nice. Okay, and last but not least is Red Mage, which sits comfortably in between Black Mage and Summoner in my opinion. Red Mage is the middle child. They have buttons to push, and there's stuff going on, but it's not as fast. There's not a lot to manage. They don't have a dot. They don't have to think about that. All they really have to worry about is managing their mana properly. But outside of that, their rotation is simple, like Black Mage's, where you build your mana, you do your melee combo, you do Verholy or Verflare, and then you Scorch. And you just kind of rinse and repeat that throughout the entire fight. And it doesn't really deviate from that pattern. It's not blazingly fast, where you have to be constantly looking like, what GCDs are coming off cooldown? Is Energy Drain off? Do I have to use a Fester? What about Try Disaster? It's just, oh, Acceleration's off cooldown. Cool. Guess I'll use it. So in that sense, Red Mage can be a lot more relaxing, and it might be a bit closer to Black Mage in terms of pacing, but I think that the melee combo puts it up there. It's also really hard to talk about Red Mage without mentioning their insane raid utility, so another selling point for you for Red Mage might be if you like being useful to your team, especially in emergency situations where people are dropping left and right. Red Mage can definitely be invaluable in those situations for just trying to power through a fight or getting some more prog in. Those are all situations that, you know, Red Mage will absolutely excel in. Also for Red Mage, they have pretty much freedom of movement. Summoner a little less so, but they still have a lot. And Red Mage is pretty much, you can move however you want to, whenever you want to, provided it doesn't interrupt like your Jolt cast or something like that. So if Black Mage's whole planning and thinking ahead kind of thing doesn't appeal to you, but Summoner's too fast, but you know, you still want to be a reactive player, then I think Red Mage is a good one to pick up. I think that it'll fit really well with that playstyle. And not to mention, it brings a lot of utility, just so much utility to any team. Don't go on that one. Don't go on that one.
Why not?
So yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on how each job feels to play. I hope that it is easy to understand what I mean by slow, medium, and fast, and I also hope that it makes it easier to pick out which job you might like playing more. If this video wasn't helpful, then I hope it was at least entertaining to some degree. If you enjoyed this video, hopefully I'll have more out in the future discussing impressions. I might also put out a couple overviews and guides on jobs that I know a little bit more about. But outside of that, I hope that you have a great day and take it easy.
Fun fact, during this video, your tank choked a little bit.
I'll be sure to remember that.